I'm Jason Aponte. That's Vish Kumar. And the 49ers are 2-0. We're going to talk about the biggest takeaways from the 49ers Rams. We're going to talk about a little bit of PFF in their grading system and maybe look a little bit forward to Thursday Night Football. Stick around after the intro. Welcome, everybody. Let's go, Niners. My name is Jason Aponte. Aponte, that's Vish Kumar. And make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to both channels, and hit that notification bell for when we both go live. This is the Jason and Vish show that we're going to be doing every Monday, it seems like, after Sprint Right Option Podcast. And when Vish gets done with work, Vish, what's up, buddy?
What's up, Jason? How have you been? 2-0, baby. 2-0.
2-0. And, you know, the thing is with the NFL is you don't get points. You don't get style points, right? So you don't move up in the rankings when you beat Hawaii State 58-0. But you do move up when you beat LSU, depending on how you beat them as well, too. I just wanted to say before we got on here, man, I'm hurt as a football fan that we are not going to get to see Nick Chubb play for the rest of the year now. And if you're worried about your fantasy football team, I would advise you to seek some help. We're going to be missing one of the better running backs of in the entire league, unfortunately. What's up?
Sorry, Deshaun Watson and Elijah Moore almost just hooked up on a pretty unbelievable throw and catch. But I completely agree with your words on Nick Chubb. He is one of my favorite players to watch just because he's such a consummate professional. He's such a good football player. He's so consistent. He's one of the most team first players that I think you can see in the NFL. He's so humble. He does everything with such class. It's unfortunate to see him get hurt, especially given what he's gone through in his career with knee injuries. I hope it's not too serious, and I hope he comes back fully healthy because football is better with Nick Chubb playing it.
Easily. And that's it. Like, regardless of all that other stuff, you just want to see the best talent be out there, regardless. And even if your team was playing them, right? You know, like nobody wants to see that happen. So, yeah, Nick Chubb, one of the better players and one of the favorite players that I have to watch in the league. But speaking of watching football, we got a chance to dig into the tape. Sunday's game was at times a little tense. I'm going to ask you this, and this is how I kind of want to start this, Vish. Did 49ers fans overlook the Rams? Because I don't think the 49ers did.
Yeah. I don't know that every 49ers fan did, but as a 49ers fan, I feel like I certainly did. Now, I had a different opinion after week 1, but even then I thought the matchup is just so favorable for the 49ers, given how it works out typically. I thought they would kind of breeze through the game, and they did at certain points, but I guess I was more impressed with the overall talent of the Rams than I originally expected to be. They were a little better up front on both sides of the ball than I expected them to be. And I felt like the bigger difference in the game was not a talent discrepancy. It was just an experience discrepancy. The Rams' young players, when it counted and when the game got tighter, they weren't ready because they hadn't been familiar with that moment. They lost their poise and made a couple execution errors, namely Tutu Atwell not sight adjusting a route that's a walk-in touchdown. Kyron Williams dropping a pass that turned into an interception, which was kind of the first turning point in the game. So tiny errors like that, which were not made by the veteran team, the 49ers, who had been in these tight games and were able to adjust to playing a tight divisional game on the road, regardless of how dominant their crowd was. So I definitely think that, I originally thought it would be a larger talent discrepancy. And I think that I underestimated, one, how good Stafford is and how healthy he is this year, 2, how well the Rams are coached. But ultimately, I think it was the experience that came into play. And I wonder how this matchup will turn out in week 17, man, because I think the Rams are going to steadily improve with this young team and with how well they're coached between McVay and Raheem Morris.
That's the thing is I watched the week 1 film, and I know we like to make jokes about, McVay and the Seattle Seahawks and everything, but I'm pretty good at being able to pick out concepts that are similar from McVay, from LaFleur, from McDaniel, from Shanahan. And when I watched that game, I watched a bunch of concepts be flipped. A lot of the ways that he was getting guys open in space was a little bit different than it's been in years. Now you can say hey, it's personnel. Obviously, Cooper Kupp changes certain things and everything. But I was walking away like, man, like McVay's really having a good time with this. Now, sure, we can look at the Seattle Seahawks and say, hey, they're lacking in talent. They're lacking in talent on the defensive side of the ball, and that's what it is. But I do think that we kind of forgot that Sean McVay is a great coach and that Sean McVay knows how to play to the strengths and Sean McVay knows how to attack defenses. It's kind of what we saw a little bit of and why the first half kind of went the way that it did because of the information that was being gathered by Steve Wilkes trying to figure out a way to slow down this offense. But yeah, look, talent discrepancy is one thing, right? And I think that still is there. And maybe we did overlook them because they don't have the bigger names. And you just say, hey, listen, it's probably just Aaron Donald and just Matthew Stafford. But, having a really good quarterback can mask so many other things. But the Sean McVay thing, I felt like was really lost because we love to make jokes about Kyle Shanahan owning Sean McVay and all of these things. But we forget that Sean McVay is a very good coach who knows how to coach up offense. And he did a great job in this game early on.
Yeah, their plan was really, really good. They did a good job of getting Stafford time and space to throw by changing the launching point for him. And you give Stafford time and space to throw. The way he was manipulating the 49ers zone defense, the way he was getting through his reads, how well he was moving in the pocket, and then the way he throws the ball. I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's truly a great quarterback. And I know I'm a bit of a
we know.
fan, but the last 2 weeks, he's really been unbelievable. And I just want to say this about Puka and Matthew Stafford in general. Look at the production he has gotten out of how many different receivers, right? Everyone said it was him and Megatron early. Megatron made Matthew Stafford. But then when Megatron left, Marvin Jones Jr. became an excellent football player, and he's only put up great stats one place in his career with Matthew Stafford in Detroit. Golden Tate put up stats like he's never put up in his career with Matthew Stafford in Detroit. The New York Giants got a biscuit named Kenny Golladay, who was a 1,500-yard receiver with Matthew Stafford in Detroit. Biscuit. Cooper Kupp was a good receiver. Did anybody look at Cooper Kupp as a triple crown winner before he got with Matthew Stafford? And then he was looked at as one of the 4, 5, 6 best receivers in football. He's doing the same thing with Puka and Tutu Atwell. He's a terrific quarterback. But ultimately, I think that the Niners, for having to play a tough division game on the road, having to play a team that, the game was probably closer than they wanted it to be, they did an excellent job of making the requisite plays to win that game. Not every game is going to be clean. And sometimes in these kinds of games, we see the Niners beat themselves because they're in a place with the team that they shouldn't be. And that leads to mental errors. In this particular case, though, they had penalties. They never had penalties that were completely detrimental. And they didn't turn the football over. Ultimately, that allowed them to pull ahead and win this game, even though, it was a lot tighter than I think everybody expected originally, given that, the line was Niners negative -8.5.
And I think with the Puka thing, and again, we were kind of just talking about fantasy football, but fantasy football has kind of led me to like evaluating wide receivers so well. And the way that they were using him, a lot of people just wanted to say it was a 1-for-1 with Cooper Kupp. I didn't see Cooper Kupp when I was watching Puka. I saw Robert Woods when he was there and when that offense was really humming with Jared Goff. That's the way they were utilizing him in the backfield. 25.1% in line, in the slot a little bit. He can't play X like Cooper Kupp can. So that's kind of what's I don't know if it's cool because 49er fans don't want to hear this, but Puka Nacua isn't going to lose his role when Cooper Kupp does come back, whenever that is. He'll just be another extension in a way that they've been familiar getting the ball. And I think he's a little bit more like Robert Woods than he is Cooper Kupp. And that's what I kind of walked away with when I saw him in his first game.
I see. That's interesting. I see Walmart Cooper Kupp, but I can see the Robert Woods comparisons. The one thing that he does do that they seem to get with all their receivers, he's kind of a stud. He blocks.
And by that, Vish, I meant the way that they utilized him, right? Like they were utilizing him and putting him all over the field. I'm not talking about comps. I'm not talking I'm not talking about 1-for-1 with Robert Woods. I was talking about like Robert Woods was used in a way that would help Cooper Kupp, right? And then they had Sammy Watkins who would blow everything off the top. Like that's kind of the way they were using Tutu, and that's kind of the way that you think that they're going to use them going forward. So I can kind of see McVay going back to that. Well, that's what I meant. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and either way, I mean, the guy is a stud. They had him they had like a support protection with him coming back in, and he was on Drake Jackson in line on a play, and he kind of had him one-on-one, and he blocks his butt off. I don't know where the Rams find these receivers that are just scrappy, that block the way they do. I mean, and to be fair, the Niners have those receivers too, because Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings are pretty fantastic blockers. But yeah, Puka's a stud. I didn't see Puka coming.
So let me ask you this question. There's a lot of talk now about the fact that Christian McCaffrey played every single snap.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to give your take before I give mine about it and why. I'm not even going to lead you. Just go ahead. I just want to hear what you want to say.
Yeah, I don't think it's the best situation. Obviously, you understand why Christian McCaffrey plays every snap. Mm-hmm. He is the best offensive player on the 49ers, and he is such a good football player, right? He impacts the game with every snap that he has. But at the same time, the biggest thing for I appreciate that, Swift Dog.
Appreciate you, Swift Dog.
But the biggest thing for the 49ers is between him and Debo, keeping them fresh and healthy. Because yesterday we saw that both of those two players can dominate a game like no other duo of skill weapons can. I pointed this out in my post game. I pointed it out earlier this morning with Rob. After the leak play to Juwan Jennings, which was, I think, around the 14th minute, right?
Leak
around the
completed.
Minute, right. We haven't seen that one before in a while. It was around like the 14th minute mark, I want to say, of the fourth quarter. Every single offensive play was run for either Debo Samuel or Christian McCaffrey from there. Every single offensive play. And that's, cool to see. But so because he's such a good player, I understand why the usage of him is the way it is. And if Elijah Mitchell wasn't back, I would also understand why he's playing every snap, because I saw enough of preseason to understand that they don't trust Ty Davis-Price or Jordan Mason at this point. They don't trust them in pass protection, and they don't trust them in the pass game. There were too many pass protection busts and pass game busts from between the two of them in preseason. So I understand why neither of those two guys are playing. But Elijah Mitchell has been mostly solid in all of those categories when he's played. His only issue is that he's been hurt. I don't understand why he didn't get a few more snaps. I love the way Shanahan answered the question after the game. He owned it. He said that that's something they definitely look at, and that's something they definitely are looking forward to do. And so I completely understand both sides to it. I think it's a little bit overblown to jump on it, because sometimes when you are in the thick and thins of a football game, you're not thinking about Christian McCaffrey 2 weeks from now. You're thinking about trying to win this football game, and Christian McCaffrey helps you do that today. But ultimately, I would think it would be better for the 49ers and more beneficial in general to get Elijah Mitchell a few more carries. Also because his legs are fresh, and Elijah Mitchell adds an explosive element and a speed to this offense that's kind of missing all over the field right now.
My take is similar to yours. I think this is a one-game thing. And I think when you hear Kyle Shanahan after the game talk about, well, this wasn't the plan, I think he believed that they were going to be winning by a certain amount. And when you realize that you, like you said, you're in the middle of a dogfight, you really can't get away from the guy that you're riding. And again, like, this is not something that I expect to continue, right? Like, he talked about, hey, this is not going to be the plan. We've got to find a way to get Elijah Mitchell in. I don't think the 49ers are going to need Christian McCaffrey every single down against the New York Giants. It's in this game, Kyle Shanahan felt, I don't want to mess around with Elijah Mitchell. I don't want to mess around with anybody else. Christian McCaffrey is not only his obvious prowess when he has the ball, but the air that he occupies and the attention from the defense that he brings, right? If Elijah Mitchell's on the field, you're not really worried that the ball's going to get thrown to him. If Jordan Mason's on the field, you know the ball's not going to get thrown to him. But if McCaffrey's on the field, you can throw a screen, you could run a draw, you could run him out on a route, you can hand the ball off. There's so many things that just his presence alone draws the defense to, that it's hard to get away from that. And one other thing is, the loudest complaining about his usage in this game, if Elijah Mitchell comes into this game and he's stuffed at the line, fumbles the football, well, where's Christian McCaffrey? It's like, listen, man, you can't have it both ways. If Kyle Shanahan felt that in this game, and this is specific to this game, in this game, if he was going to be someone that is going to be the person that you're just like, I want to get the ball to my studs and I want to bring this one home, I don't think you can argue with that sentiment. Now, if it's 2 and 3 and 4 weeks down when you're seeing this happen over and over again, which I don't think it will, again, game plan specific, personnel that you're facing, I don't think you're going to need to do that against Arizona. But in this game, when you see the fight that the Rams have put up, when you see that your defense in the beginning of the game is like literally sitting there and it's kind of in an issue where it's like, man, I didn't think we were going to be able to stop them. It's like, listen, get the ball to your studs and play them. That doesn't mean that this is going to continue. Next week, I expect on Thursday, you're going to see a ton of Elijah Mitchell, or a lot more at least. In this game, Kyle Shanahan thought it was best to go to Christian McCaffrey. And when you want to get the ball to your studs, who can argue with that premise?
Yeah, and I don't even disagree with the take that, hey, Christian McCaffrey needs to be rested more. I think that there's credence to both lines of thinking, and there's a valid argument on both sides. The one thing I'll also add to the Elijah Mitchell part of this conversation is, what if they just want to give him another couple weeks to just get ready? He had a very abbreviated offseason because he was banged up, and perhaps they feel like he could use a couple more weeks of practice just to get his legs under him. Now, they would play him in a situation that they had an emergency, but maybe they don't want to put that on him right away. Now, I'm speculating 100% there, and that could be very much the wrong take. am adding something to this discussion because I do think he's a good enough player where he shouldn't be seeing 0 snaps in a game. He's not one of those players that the 49ers can't have on the field because he certainly contributes as a plus almost every time he plays. And yeah, he doesn't fumble. He sticks his nose in pass protection. He's not like the most innovative runner in terms of setting up blocks and all that, but he runs tough. He does his job. He finishes runs hard.
He can get what you block for him, right? Like he can get what you block for him. And that's all you can ask for.
He hits the hole without hesitation as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I just think this was game plan specific. This was this game. This is not going to be the norm. I think obviously the idea is not to go ahead and overuse Christian McCaffrey or anything like that. But in this game, Kyle Shanahan felt like this is what he wanted to do. I wanted to ask you a little bit about obviously the Brock Purdy throw thing has become the talk of everything because we can't just have a discussion where we're just like, hey, this team won a game. But I wanted to ask you about Kyle Shanahan's confidence in Brock Purdy and the way that he's operating the offense. Last week we see the 4th and 1 on the first drive, and then the play at the end of the half to run the QB sneak from the 1 certainly feels like Kyle Shanahan feels like he can do whatever he wants on 4th down. And the other one that I want to point out is
I don't agree with that take.
Well, I wanted to point out one other thing too.
Okay.
I wanted to point out one other because when it was 4th and 2 in the red zone, they were certainly ready to go, but that wasn't a catch by Ayuk. And when it got backed up to 4th and 7, that's when he was just like, all right, no. So he was ready to go again too. Like if it was 4th and 2 and that Ayuk catch stands, Kyle was ready to go again on 4th. So it just one thing that
I don't think that's a Brock thing though. I don't
really. Okay, I want to.
I think he said it after the game. Look, I think both parts of this are true.
Okay.
I don't doubt that he has more confidence in Brock than he has seemingly had in any other quarterback he's had here. Mm-hmm. That's inarguable to me. You can hear it in how he talks about these quarterbacks.
And he defends him.
He compliments Brock and he defends Brock.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He never complimented Jimmy and never really defended Jimmy. I guess he kind of complimented Jimmy, but all of those, it was kind of a faint praise, always followed up by no means it was perfect or something like that. Similar with Trey Lance, similar with Nick Mullins, similar with CJ Beathard, similar with all of them. But I think yesterday going forward on 4th down was more about, I don't think he felt confident in what was happening to his defense because I think he felt like the other side, the quarterback was playing at too high a level and he felt like they needed to seize momentum of the game. Now, where I really compliment him and commend him is sometimes in those kinds of situations, he gets awfully conservative and it's almost like he's coaching a little bit scared of the moment.
Right.
He was aggressive in that moment and he took charge of that football game. And I feel like seeing how he's coached the last 2 games, I don't know that I've ever seen him in this mental place where he just looks so relaxed and he seems to have just a great flow and understanding of making decisions in game. And right now he's clicking all the right buttons as a head coach and an offensive coordinator for this football team. But I don't think in that particular game yesterday, it was about, hey, I have so much confidence in Brock Purdy. I think it was one of the first times that he's looked at his defense and said, I cannot guarantee myself a stop, especially because the Rams weren't just going down the field and scoring. They were doing it play after play. The Niners weren't possessing the ball on offense, right? The Rams had how many 7-8+ drives?
And I think they ran 80. I think they ran 80 snaps. They ran 80 plays, and the 49ers ran 53, if I'm not mistaken. That's a hell of a discrepancy.
Right. And I think the Rams outpossessed them by 6 minutes too. It was 33 minutes to
That's usually the 49ers.
Minutes.
That's usually the 49ers game.
Right. And so that's where I think that yesterday's game dictated that. And I love how aggressive he was in owning and understanding, hey, we got to go. We're here in the red zone. It's 17-10. Field goal is not going to cut it. We need to score here. And then because they were kicking the ball back to the Rams after in half. And the Rams actually had a good start to that drive too before it fell apart. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think my point is less to do with what I just saw in this game and kind of what I've seen with this entire time with him. With
Fair.
Right. And again, like I said, they call him back that Olave touchdown. That's awful. But when I saw the 4th and 2 on the Ayuk catch, and I saw that it wasn't going to stand, you see the offense come right off the field. He was ready to go again on 4th and 2. But you know what? I do agree with the sentiment that he was looking at his defense like, okay, this is one of those games where I can't just sit back and rely for them to just get us stops, right? And this is kind of going to be my leeway, my segue into this part of it is, the missed throws are obviously what everybody's talking about right now, Brock Purdy. Call me optimistic, call me overly, I guess dismissive. But the way I'm kind of viewing it is this. In a game in which Brock Purdy left those plays on the field, in a game in which Brock Purdy did not turn the ball over and still looked in very command of this offense, the 49ers still put up 30 points. So one or two of those puts them in a different spot. The way I'm optimistically looking at it is this. If 30 points is what you're going to get in a game when those throws are missed, man. And if for a guy who's not even into the teens of his starts, I think that's kind of where I am looking at this game as more of a bump in the road than it is something that's more of a trend. And obviously a trend can only happen when it happens multiple times. And I think another thing is we've kind of been spoiled with the way that Brock has started his career because he's hit so many of those throws and he hasn't missed them. So almost seeing him miss them is a shock. But a lot of people forget the because he plays well beyond his years, he's still a guy who hasn't even gotten to his 15th game starting yet. And games like this happen to every single quarterback. Like I watched Joe Burrow for 2 weeks, miss tons of throws. I watched Josh Allen turn the ball over at an unreal rate. I watched Patrick Mahomes for a large part of the game yesterday look really bad against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it happens to everyone. The point is, it's just like this whole idea of like, well, you're not going to get away with that in the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. I have an idea. Let's get there first before we start worrying about all that other stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you. At the same time, he's got to make those throws. Like that's in the NFL, like every starting quarterback, those are back touchdowns that, as I've said like 18 times, I feel like in the last 2 days, you feel like you can put in your back pocket. And I feel like some of the things that you discussed is why people are hesitant to look at Brock Purdy and anoint him as a top 10 quarterback.
But you can't say that, though. You can't say that, though, Vish. You can't say that, though, Vish. You can't say that, you're still – not you. I'm just saying, like, you – because there's this large sentiment of, like, well, why aren't you on board? And there's some people that are still like, well, he's only had 11, 12 starts, right? Like, and
well, no. It's not about being on board or off board, in my opinion.
I don't think anybody's off board yet.
Right. He's played well. I think the point is that very few quarterbacks have a margin for error where their offense is so good around them that they can miss 2 wide open walk-in touchdowns where their receiver's open by 5 yards and their offense can still put up 30 and that doesn't really affect the final output, right? That's not there for many other quarterbacks and many other offenses. And it tells you how good the Niners are on offense and it tells you how good Kyle Shanahan is at scheming it up. At the same time, I agree, every quarterback misses those throws, but that doesn't mean that every quarterback shouldn't miss those throws. And I feel like those were 2 throws he should have made. He knows he should have made them. It's not the world's biggest deal to acknowledge, hey, he should have made those throws, but I ultimately agree with everything you said. And I think he'll be fine. I think the reason we say he should have made those throws is because he's fully capable of making those throws. He's capable. We expect him to make those throws because he's fully capable of doing it. And he missed them in this game. And let's just hope he doesn't miss them next time, pretty much.
I think the miss that was a little bit more concerning was the throw off the back shoulder on the slant. Like those are the throws that he like hits in his sleep, right? Like those are, that one's a little bit more like, man, you got to keep the chains moving right there because that's, bad things can happen when that ball hits the shoulder pad and pops up, right? Like
True.
The overthrows are just incompletions, right? At the end of the day, those right there that are the throws that are schemed up normally with slants, you got to hit those. Those, like, I feel like that throw, I felt like I was like, okay, this is how I know that this is the first time that we've seen Brock Purdy be somewhat mortal. And that's okay. It's going to happen, right? Like, again, like, no need to panic. And again, like you said, this is the thing is that Brock Purdy is afforded this sort of leeway because, hey, if it's not working like that, and by the way, Brock Purdy not turning the ball over in this game, that was
paramount. I was going to say that as well. That was
paramount.
Huge.
That's huge because Jimmy Garoppolo could miss those throws, but he's still going to throw the ball to the linebacker eventually, right? Like, and that's the thing. Like, you still never got the feeling in this game that Brock Purdy was losing control of the game or those throws had him spiraling or he was like never. Like, it never felt like that at all. It's one, shocking because he hasn't hit those throws. And 2, like, you still have to be able to give him credit for being able to operate the offense, command the offense, and still put the team in a position where they can win the game by not turning the ball over and protecting the ball. Kind of what Kyle Shanahan said after the game.
Yeah, and I think we also saw the good things in his ability to play quarterback yesterday, even though he was somewhat erratic with his ball placement, right? There were a lot of balls like Debo ran on that wide motion, wide in. He threw that ball very, very low on him. He threw it with some juice, actually, but he threw it low on him. Early to Kittle, first throw of the game. That was well behind him. That was a nice catch. So he was maybe more inaccurate than he's been, but we saw the little quarterback things that he does to create greater margin for error on his throws. And that's kind of the antithesis of his predecessor, Jimmy Garoppolo, who maybe was a more gifted passer than Purdy in terms of his ability to hit the bullseye as a thrower, but he couldn't do those little quarterback things like using his eyes to move a defender slightly or throwing that ball ever so early with anticipation to create a larger window for him to throw the ball, like the one to Juwan Jennings in the 2-minute drill. And then we saw him do the little things when they had to score, right? On the 2-minute drill, the one drive to make it 27-20 or 27-17 when he completed leak to Juwan Jennings. So he did make a few throws in the game, but I just felt like overall his ball placement was somewhat erratic. He did play a fine quarterback game though, because he got to the right place on a majority of his throws, and ultimately, like you said, he didn't put the ball in harm's way once, which was massive when you look at the entirety of that football game.
Yep. I mean, some games you can get away with a turnover. Yesterday's game felt like whoever was going to turn the ball over first was going to lose. And that's kind of what happened in this game, especially with the second interception with Lenore. Vish, I wanted to pivot a little bit because the day after, what a lot of us do who cover the team in various ways is, we cite the statistics, we cite, next gen stats, we talk about advanced statistics, and then, eventually the PFF stuff starts to come up. Okay. I want to start this by saying I think that there are so many valuable statistics and metrics that PFF offers. And I think that they can be tied to film, like tied to film. Again, statistics should back up with what you see with your eyes. It shouldn't refute what you see with your eyes. And I think that they do a largely great job. But today, when we woke up, we're looking at the grades, and Spencer Burford got a 0.0 pass blocking grade, right? 0.0. Now, to give you guys a little bit of backstory, before I ever did any sort of content, I was a data collector for PFF. And essentially what that is they send you college film, and you have to identify each player on each play. And they don't send you all 22, by the way. They send you broadcast film, which is like by far the hardest way to do this, because it's like coming out of a commercial and guys are already set. But essentially what you have to do is you have to identify all 22 players on the field, where they're at. And one step right is a LEO, one step in is a LE, and all of these things, right? Okay. So the data collectors, what they do for PFF is they do that. They send back their findings, and they're not grading. They are putting players in certain spots. Then the graders themselves, they get all that information, and depending on how much you got right, they use it and they know where they're going to be. Okay. So the graders, they grade each play on a -2 to 2 scale, +2. -2, essentially, long story short, is like a red zone interception. +2 is essentially like the David Tyree helmet catch. That's where, and you can do anything in between. -1.5, -1, 0, 1, 2, -1.5. Okay. My issue is not with the grading system. My issue is with the graders themselves, because as much as we watch this game, so much is done with like the idea of like, oh, well, he blew the block, without understanding schematically what he is supposed to do with his technique. For instance, if there's a miscommunication between Burford and McKivitz, and McKivitz allows a guy to get inside of Burford, and it looks like Burford's getting blown by, and he gets dinged for the pressure, or he gets dinged on the play, not understanding that responsibility and who had to pass off who and do whatever is probably the biggest failing of the grading system, because the graders themselves are just looking at one player, and if a person flies by them, it's, well, he missed that block. And essentially what would do a bigger service to these numbers, because they're used as the Bible, they're in bed with NFL, you literally see them plastered everywhere. Hell, teams are negotiating with players in their contract negotiations with PFF grades. So these things are not to be taken lightly. My biggest thing is, it would help the grading system so much more if these graders had an actual grasp on what the technique is, what's the blocking scheme, what's the coverage scheme. You probably can't tell me the difference between cover 2, 3, 4, 6. You can't tell me any of those things, but yet you're dinging guys for having guys run right past you. Vish, that's the end of my rant. That's it. Like that's all I wanted to say about PFF, man.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. I've maybe been more critical of PFF in the past, Now I feel like it's just one person's perspective. I think the bigger issue is that people cite the grade like it's gospel and like it's a number that completely, fully, exemplifies what went on in the game and who played well and who didn't, when it's just one person's opinion and one metric to look at it. I don't see it that way. And I think that sometimes when we get into the assignment distribution, we have an idea based on watching this offense a lot of times, and we think that they do some things a certain type of way, and we give our opinion on that. And it can be deferring in this case from PFF. So I agree with you. I didn't feel like Spencer Burford I didn't think he had the greatest game. I'm not going to tell you that.
Terrible game. He didn't have a
but
zero game.
He didn't have a quote unquote 0.0
yeah.
game in terms of pass protection rating or whatever the number is for PFF. It's one person's perspective and opinion. I think the greater issue is that the number gets cited maybe sometimes as if it's gospel for what went on in the football game. And sometimes you can have a deferring opinion. And my hope is generally when we have differing opinions, we're able to have a conversation about it and you're actually able to back up why you have the opinion. And I think the bigger issue is sometimes when we get into these debates, whether it's on Twitter, YouTube, elsewhere, and you actually ask someone to give reasons why they have their opinion, they don't have the best of reasoning. They just have an opinion.
And that's the thing too, is we can disagree, but I can still see your point of view. Like, I can understand, right? Like, I can say, okay, I actually disagree with that, but I do understand where you're coming from. And I do agree with this, this, and this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, is the PFF thing has gotten to a point where, like, again, you said it's the gospel. Teams are using it to negotiate with players. They're literally cited. You watch Sunday Night Football. It's on the screen. It's almost, this number is indicative of your value to the team. And it's literally what you bring to the table. And for me, it's just, it really should be noted that it is subjective. It's subjective by the grader, and it's also subjective to whether the grader understands what's going on, like, what they're looking at. Do you know what you're looking at? Do you know what you're supposed to be looking for in certain instances? Do you know what cover 2, cover 3 is? Because if you're just going to say the guy in front of the wide receiver was responsible, even if he's passing him off and moving into his zone and staying in his zone, then it's like, man, we need to get these guys to get a little bit of a greater knowledge of the game schematically and understanding what's going on. And I think that's when the grades themselves will lift.
I don't even think it's that as much as sometimes you're just wrong on your initial watch. That's why you got to go and watch these things so many times. Like, for example, in my post game, I thought that the play Isaiah Oliver made on 4th and 2 on Kyron Williams was the nickel pressure, because they'd spammed that nickel pressure that many times with him rushing through. He was rushing through the C gap, actually, so I should have known when he fit the B gap. But they were actually playing Tampa 2, and he's the hook curl player, so he's got the B gap in the run fit, and it's a good play by him. He triggers really quickly. He sees run quickly. He whiffs the tackle, but it's a nice play by him. So I was wrong in my original interpretation, and so it happens. I mean, I feel like for the PFF graders too, as you mentioned, there's a responsibility to get the grades out quickly and see everything as fast as you can, and sometimes it takes a long time to comb through a football game. I mean, we talk about these games every week, right? And I have to give an opinion on it. But oftentimes, in order to give an opinion, I go back and watch these games 4 or 5 times over the course of the week. And I feel like I have a better understanding by the 5th time to talk about it. But certainly, I'm just giving my opinion on all of it. And oftentimes, it can just be wrong. But it's my interpretation of that. And so sometimes I feel like to give leeway to everybody in this situation, it's hard to know exactly what's going on in a football game when you're looking at it for the first time. And it was the same thing I was saying about watching football practice too. The onus on the media to be able to see everything and give you an opinion of what happened in football practice when so many things goes on in an individual play that you have to rewatch it 5, 6, 7 times just to be able to see every single player on the field. It's a difficult expectation. I know everybody's looking for a result. Everybody's looking for a good and bad evaluation. But sometimes in football, because there's so much nuance to it, and there's so much details in how everything's synchronized together, X's and O's, you're just flat out wrong in how you interpret something. The goal is to just learn it, though, and hopefully understand it the next time you see it.
Well said. And I think that's the perfect place to pivot away. Anybody that you really walked away impressed with in this game that you feel like nobody's speaking about right now, Vish?
Yeah, Juwan Jennings. Nice. What a game.
Yeah.
Menace and blocking. The 2 catches he made were huge within the context of the game, and they weren't like just right on his chest. He had to go make 2 tough guy plays on the ball. And then the other guy was Ronnie Bell. They had him play a lot of snaps. It's very interesting to me that he has taken Ray McCloud and Danny Gray's role on offense as the fourth wide receiver. When Brandon Ayuk got hurt, they immediately put him in the game. They clearly trust him. They like him. They like him enough to play, I think, in all three receiver spots. And when he comes in, he competes his butt off blocking. Funny enough, we were talking about Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp when he was drafted. To me, I called him bootleg Robert Woods, Walmart Robert Woods, and I kind of am still seeing it when he comes on and he blocks his butt off. So definitely another person to see. And then Drake Jackson. I thought Drake Jackson, okay, 2 weeks in a row, he's played very, very well. The two things to me that signify Drake Jackson's game, even though maybe technically he's not the most refined player yet, is that he's a freak athlete who plays with crazy effort. And when you combine those two things, he's able to make an impact on the football game. I don't think that there's enough of credit given to what he did stopping the Rams on the first drive. They have a perfect call calling a backside screen away from the blitz on 3rd and 10 to Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua is going to score on that play, okay? It's blocked up. He's going to score. Drake Jackson runs him down from defensive end just because of his athleticism and effort. And he had 3 sacks against Pittsburgh because of his athleticism and effort. Because he has those two things, I think as he grows technically, as he gets stronger, as he feels better playing into his body, he's going to be a problem year 3 and year 4. And the fact that he's already contributing with those two things is awesome to see. And then finally, Javon Kinlaw. What a strong game for Javon Kinlaw. Finishing it up with the batted pass. He had a very good game. It's very nice to see him play that well. I think he was charted with 4 pressures, and I think he had a good game. And then, dude, also Nick Bosa. Like, Nick Bosa didn't play probably as well as I thought like Nick Bosa
when
should
you're watching
play.
it initially.
He's still getting back into football shape. But when you go back and watch the game on film, Nick Bosa actually had a lot better game than he's probably given credit for on TV, just because it felt like his name wasn't being called as much. And he had a good game, I thought. And he's not Nick Bosa yet, but he's closer to being Nick Bosa than I think people realize. I think there's just an expectation that he has 4 sacks in every game now that he has the contract that he has.
Funny enough, PFF graded Nick Bosa as the highest graded defender as well, too. So there you go. If you want to use that for your argument as well, too.
Oh, fair. There we go.
Well, my guy was Javon Hargrave in this game, man.
That's a good one.
Next Gen Stat has the stat of average separation from when the quarterback is pressured, hurried, or thrown. He was the closest to the ball every single time. 5 pressures himself. And to your point about Javon Kinlaw, 6 hurries, 6 pressures on 31 true pass sets for a guy who's a rotational down lineman. And the thing about Kinlaw that's really impressive is what we know about him was he's a run stuffer. Well, now he's adding this element to his game. And, again, we know the injuries, we know the expectations and everything, but him just being this good right now in 2 games, and obviously you can't extrapolate that across the season until it happens, but having him be that good, for that while, and if he can continue that, my goodness, man, like the lift it gives this defense and what they're able to do when they don't have to stress Armstead and Hargrave so much. And it's just such a refreshing thing, and I'm happy for the kid, man. So
I do think they have a problem, though, that I did want to talk to you about.
Too many defensive line?
No, I think the defensive line is fine. I think the front 7 is fine. Like, I think Warner and Greenlaw are right now playing about as high of a level as I think they've played as a duo, specifically Warner. I think this is the best football so far of Fred Warner's career, which is a mouthful given how high his level has been since 2019. But I do think their secondary has a little bit of an issue. When you go back and you say, Shanahan says there's a reason we benched Ambry Thomas, I can't say it publicly, but watch the film. You go back and watch the film and you see the assignment bust from Ambry Thomas. They gave Isaiah Oliver guaranteed money to be the starting nickel corner of this team. And he has a more or less solid game in week 1 when he had to replace Ambry Thomas. But they believe in him so much that they go back to Ambry Thomas to start week 2 before he injures his knee. I know Oliver made some nice plays in this game. I don't want to take credit away. He brought Kyron Williams down on that 4th and 2. That was a nice tackle. He missed that tackle a couple of times earlier in the game, specifically on one where Kyron Williams falls down catching the ball and Oliver's on top of him and he's unable to bring him to the ground. That was a bad miss. And then you had one on a screen. That was a bad miss as well. He had the interception, which was a nice play. Fortuitous bounce, but hey, he caught the football. That was a good play, good ball skills from him. And then we talked about the run fit overall, which was a nice play as well. But overall, when you look at the context of the game, he didn't have the strongest game overall. and he certainly missed plays, even though he had those 3 plays that were standing out. I think they have this kind of 2021 situation. Do you remember in 2021 they started 2-0? Diamador Lenore started the first 2 games at corner because Jason Verrett got hurt week 1, and it was a revolving door. Josh Norman, Drake Kirkpatrick. That was D'Amico's first year. D'Amico took a lot of criticism for not adjusting, being unable to adjust early in the year. We're seeing a lot of that criticism being levied at Steve Wilkes, but I think they have a similar situation where right now they only trust 2 cornerbacks on this roster. They trust Booney Ward. They trust Diamador Lenore. They don't trust the third guy, whether it's Ambry Thomas or Isaiah Oliver. And I think that's a completely different conversation from even when you look at their offensive line, because we can say Colton McKivitz struggled week 1. I thought he was a lot better week 2. We can say Spencer Burford hasn't had the strongest start to the year, but they trust those 2 guys to execute their assignments, and there's only a certain level that they expect from them. At this point, for both Thomas and Oliver, there's not even a level of play expectation. It's a question of, can they trust them to be assignment sound? And right now we can't say that for either of them. Luckily, the Niners have a large amount of time still to be able to figure this issue out. But I think they have a weird situation where, as good as the team is, they are 2-0 despite of it. They have this weird situation where I think they only trust 2 corners at some point. And the question is, to me, do you think they will trust Oliver, or do you think Oliver will gain that trust, which is what they signed him to do? Maybe he does over the next few games. I've been skeptical of Oliver, but there's no, how am I to say he can't turn it around? Or do you think Thomas comes in and steps up and Lenore goes back inside? It's a pretty funky situation. But I was especially weirded out by the fact that they benched Ambry last week and they went back to Ambry this week after telling you, like, they pretty much said publicly Ambry screwed up assignments. And so what does that say about their feelings about Oliver?
And it's funny that you bring this up, because there's all this talk always about base defense. The 49ers had one other linebacker on the field, and it was for 1 snap, and it was Oren Burks. So there is no base defense. The nickel is going to be on the field every single down, regardless of run, whatever they think it is. The base defense is no longer 3 linebackers. Well, it's 2 straight weeks of this.
They played a team that majors pretty much exclusively in 11 personnel too.
It's 2 straight weeks though. The same thing with Pittsburgh as well too, right? You
have the 11 personnel team as well.
Right. So that's the thing. It's like you're going to see more of this from other teams, especially if this is starting to become a trend where they feel like you can get an advantage. So to see Oren Burks be the only other linebacker on the field and know that it's just going to be Warner and Greenlaw and all the other defensive backs, yeah, it's a little bit more concerning if that's what. But again, Oliver did turn it around, and he did. He that play was very good on the tip pass. But again, the room for improvement. I think that's kind of what we were talking about with the offensive line when we're sitting there and saying, well, this wasn't necessarily a great game right here, but it is week 1, and this team tends to peak at the end of the year. So they bring in Bradley Roby today as well too. I think they're starting to feel the need, especially because Ambry Thomas has been injured in 2 straight games. Obviously I'm being cheeky like by saying that, but it's just funny to me that, he's injured. That's why we benched him. He's injured, and there's times where
what's extra funny about him to me? It's funny how he's the one. Everybody says Adam Peters is the brilliant guy. Adam Peters is the genius scout. He's the one guy that John Lynch told us publicly was an Ambry Thomas, an Adam Peters guy, right? Like he said when they picked him, that was Adam Peters' guy. Adam Peters vouched for him. He loved him. And they've given him more chances than, Tarvarius Moore was also a 3rd-round pick somewhere near where they picked Ambry Thomas, and they certainly didn't try to give him all the chances Ambry Thomas has got. And I don't think Ambry Thomas's performance in any of the last 3 years has garnered the opportunity. Last year he made this roster, and there were guys like Janoris Jenkins who were signed on Thursday and playing on Sunday in front of him.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing is like there's more people that who knows. Darrell Luter may show up eventually. Again, this is just a week 2 thing. We're just observing what we've seen in 2 weeks, but that means there's 15 more games left. It's a lot to go through right now, and the ebbs and flows of the season and positional battles and everything. It's going to change. The 49ers are going to put out the guy that they think is going to give them the best chance to win. So I'm glad that you pointed that out as well too. Okay, Vish. When the 49ers play the Bears, it feels personal for you because you're closer to Chicago, right? Well, the 49ers play the New York.
I'm loving the Bears start to the year, by the way.
Of course you are. Of course you are. The 49ers are playing the New York Giants. I live right across the street from MetLife Stadium, right across the street. My DMs have been blowing up. All my friends from around here, big East Coast guy, we're coming. After what we just did, we'll see you here. This feels very personal for me. Like, I know that we want the wins against Dallas, we want the wins against Seattle, we want the wins against the Rams, we want the wins against the Eagles. But Vish, do these type of games when the 49ers play the Bears or when they're playing us over here, do they just get a little bit more heightened? Does your heart race a little bit more just because you know what's waiting for you if your team does not succeed?
Dude, you know the answer to that question. You know how much I hate the Chicago Bears. God, I despise the Bears. The Niners were what, 13-4 last year, and I could not take the disgust of going week 1, sitting in that monsoon, listening to those stupid fans drink their Miller Lite, and once they get enough Miller Lite going, they're like yelling and they're singing "Bear Down, Chicago Bears," and they don't shut up. And dude, the Bears can suck. Like, the Bears can be the worst team ever, and these people will still show up in the worst weather ever, take their shirt off, rip the Miller Lite, and just keep yelling about the Bears. And so I hate the Bears. I can't stand the Bears. Yeah, it's personal. And I hope that I feel very confident in your case looking at this particular game. Now, I felt very confident going into week 1. Turns out I was right about the Niners being really good, and I was right about the Bears being the worst team in football. And what happened still happened. But I think you should be good for this game, man. The Giants, it's a scary schedule for the Giants, I think, and I don't even think they're as bad as they've played. The issue is that they just have a really, really hard start to the schedule, and they have no momentum as a football team, and it feels like every time they take a step forward, they take 2 back, right? They had a good flow on offense at the end, and then, of course, their best player gets injured, right? Mm-hmm. Andrew Thomas, I think, is also banged up. And Andrew Thomas is hurt. He's their only quality offensive lineman.
They benched Evan Neal.
Right. I mean, they don't have a choice at this point. But he's so talented. It's just the thing with offensive linemen is you got to wait 2-3 years to give him an opportunity. Do you remember when everybody thought Joe Staley was the worst tackle ever in like 2008, 2009, 2010?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're making me feel better. But this one, we gotta have this one. We gotta have this one. 49ers throwback. Thank you for the donation. I give Kyle a ton of credit for going for it on 4th down to score a touchdown before the first half ended. Brock equals Kyle trust. Kyle is evolving and love to see it. I think so as well. See, 49ers throwbacks on my side, Vish.
Yeah, he is on your side. He is on your side.
But about this game, right? Again, when we were previewing the Rams game, we at least had the divisional thing to kind of fall back on, right? Divisional games are weird. The Rams know you. You know, Sean McVay's a good coach. Still the whole idea was, well, the talent discrepancy, right? Like, the 49ers are so much better than the Rams. I don't see how they keep up. This ain't Seattle. But with this game, not scoring against the Dallas Cowboys, it's egregious because you didn't score, but it's the Dallas Cowboys defense. They're very good. Second week, you're getting dog walked by the Arizona Cardinals, who, by the way, are not tanking. I want to make sure we get that off of like the idea, because if you tank and you lose 17 games, you're fired and you don't get to see the benefit of having that first round pick. So why would you benefit a team by giving them the number 1 overall pick when they're going to fire you and someone else is going to get it? You have to put good things on film. You have to show that you're a leader, because if you do look that bad, you're also not getting a job anywhere else ever again. So the idea of tanking is a little bit out there, right? The Arizona Cardinals kind of hear all that, and they come out and they start whipping the Giants' ass. Like, no pun intended. I was definitely watching, and they James Conner's looking good. They're giving up a bunch on the ground. And I
refuse to watch that game, by the way. I
had it on in the background, like, while I was watching the Niners game, because again, and plus I was giving it to Giants fans. I'm just like, I can't I can't believe you're losing to the one team that probably is the worst roster all the way through and through. But again, right?
Go ahead.
What, do you think it was somebody else?
No, I was just saying my bad for interrupting you, but no, I just refuse to watch it.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, it was the one that was on the TV and everything, and I'm not paying for fair. Ticket. Yeah, I'm not paying for that. But the 49ers, the Giants can only come back against that team. There's no way you're going to be able to do that against any other team that's like that, right? And then Barkley goes down. You look around at their weapons, Isaiah Hodgins, Sterling Shepard's starting to get back into the mode, right? Like, Julian Hyatt was actually really good in this game. That's somebody who they drafted as well, too. They still haven't gotten anything from Wan'Dale Robinson. Matt Breida is back. That's going to be who's the starter, so revenge game on deck. Offensive line looking bad. We understand Daniel Jones is a bit limited when it comes to passing, but is there anything that the Giants can do to stop the onslaught of the 49ers running away with this one? Because if they aren't properly game planned, this could go sideways pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think the Giants have one chance, right? Wink Martindale calls a crazy game on defense, and the two big guys inside just eviscerate the Niners offensive line. That's Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. The likelihood of the Niners not having a solid plan on dealing with them and not having a bunch of beaters against the crazy blitzes that Wink Martindale calls, I would put that as low. And the Giants are a very young team with talented personnel, but not developed personnel. I think the 49ers, in theory and on paper, if they execute the way they are capable of executing, should have no problems in this game, just because, again, one, there's a talent discrepancy, and two, in so many of the meaningful battles in a football game, the 49ers have an advantage, right? Like, their defensive line is going to overwhelm the Giants' offensive line. The Giants' edge players aren't really going to this isn't the most dominant pass rush the Niners are going to face. The Giants have a talented secondary.
Thibodeau and Ojulari, right? Like, they've just been
talented young players, but
they
haven't. Yeah, they haven't been producing so far this year. Okay, you can blitz a lot. Wink Martindale will be creative doing that, but that also gives the Niners a lot of opportunities with explosive plays, because then there's less guys in coverage, and that means if Debo breaks one tackle, if Christian McCaffrey makes one tackle, it's a house call. So you have that. And then finally, I mean, who on the Giants offense should scare the Niners defense? It was one player, and he's injured. That was Saquon Barkley. The Niners defense should really have no trouble, and I think they're athletic enough to curtail Daniel Jones. His running is really the only thing that I look at as advantageous for the Giants offense, because he's big and he's really fast. But again, I think with the addition of Drake Jackson to this defensive line, his athleticism and effort to be able to run down these quarterbacks. I know Stafford isn't the most mobile guy, but Kenny Pickett is decently mobile, and then he looked fast running him down. I think he'll look pretty good running down Daniel Jones as well. And so, yeah, again, any given thing can happen on any given Sunday. I've been pretty horrible at this prediction thing through 2 weeks, especially look at my Pittsburgh prediction, and then I thought the Niners would have an easier time with the Rams than they did. But I can't tell you on this matchup where the Giants' advantage or win condition is. Like, what's the Giants' win condition?
Right.
The Rams had a win condition. His name was Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, they did. And that's the thing is a quarterback, when he's playing and throwing the ball well, can mask so many other things on offense, on defense. This certainly feels like a game where the 49ers should roll. And I think this is going to be the game where, because Javon Hargrave has been close and close to the quarterback. You know, I think this is the game that you're really going to see him pop off, especially with Evan Neal not being there.
Yeah, against that interior offensive line.
And he's done it before. He's literally done it with the Eagles. I think this is the game that Javon Hargrave really goes crazy in this game. And they control the trenches. And regardless of what we said, and this is what we said last week after week one, regardless of what you have to compensate for on the offensive line, the 49ers are going to run their offense. They're not going to get out of there. They're not going to get out of what they want to do. They're still going to be able to run the ball. They're still going to be able to hit the throws that they want. They're still going to scheme guys wide open. So I don't suspect that there's anybody on this defense that can really be a game changer besides, obviously you mentioned Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence, and they're probably one of the most underrated interior guys or duos in the league.
Yeah, they're studs.
But, I think we can say this every single week, Vish. If the 49ers execute, they stay healthy, they don't lose impact players, then they're very tough to beat. And then there's very few teams. Again, 49er fans, I want to remind you guys, there's teams out there that they can play their best game. They can be completely healthy, and they could be nowhere near getting a victory. That's how bad, that's how their roster is. The 49ers can win games in multiple ways, whether they want to grind it out, whether they want to blow you out. It doesn't really matter. And the 49ers, we know when they play their game, they're hard to beat. And that's something that we're looking at with a team, and I think you should be a little bit grateful for. So for me, I just do think that the 49ers are going to get this done. It's just I still keep having this inkling about, I kind of felt the same way about the Rams game, even though I started my preview with talking about all the good things I saw on tape from the Rams and how their concepts have completely flipped from 2021. They're not running the same thing. Sean McVay's
same thing in the run game too.
Yeah,
a lot of gap scheme.
Dude, I was like, I'm going to go identify all of their passing concepts. I'm looking at these concepts and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what is it, two-man levels? That's not, and these are the things that were staples. And I'm asking around, I'm sending it to KP. I'm like, dude, what am I looking at? What happened here? Usually this is flipped to the other side of the field and it's an inbreaker on the two. And again, Sean McVay was cooking it up and he's evolving his scheme as well. When you look around at this Giants game, I don't see the way that Brian Dabble can make things easy for Daniel Jones against his defense and put his team in a position where on offensively they can really pressure the 49ers unless outside of like, coverage busts and turnovers and things like that.
Yeah, let's be honest about Daniel Jones. I like Daniel Jones more than the average person. I thought Daniel Jones would take a jump this year. That take is looking horrible, but we'll let the year play out before we put that take to bed. But against the Niners zone defense, a quarterback like Stafford that processes as well as he does, that's able to make decisions and manipulate defenders the way he does, he can make a lot of throws and a lot of decisions and get to the ball to places that Daniel Jones won't be able to. Daniel Jones just doesn't process at that high of a level. Sometimes it's slow. And he's not the thrower that Matthew Stafford is, though I don't think he's a terrible thrower. And I think that even if the Niners defense isn't as tight in their zones as they were in the first half against the Rams, I don't think Daniel Jones can exploit it the way Matthew Stafford was. Because even when they weren't tight, Stafford was still having to make big-time throws, and they were having to change the launch point of Stafford, where he can throw it and all of that. The Giants' best shot is if their offense gets really gimmicky and they pull off a few trick plays, they get a couple of fortuitous turnover bounces. The Niners, completely beat themselves and fall apart. Fluky things happen and they win this game. Otherwise, again, what is the win condition for the Giants in this game? What can you say? Hey, the Giants have this matched up advantage, so if they exploit it and they stop this, they're going to do X, Y, and Z. Again, with the Rams, they had one win condition. If their quarterback played at the level he played at for the first 3.5 quarters in that game. The Giants don't even have that win condition because their quarterback isn't that good.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. You're making me feel a lot better. Just got to have this one being here. I cannot take this all week because the Giants could lose every single game for the rest of the season after this. But it'll always be, ha, 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 we beat the 49ers.
Oh, dude. I know. You want to tell me about that?
Right,
really?
That's what I'm saying.
I'd experienced it all of last year.
That's what I'm saying. It's like literally
ruthless.
The Bears were awful and they weren't doing anything. And it's just like, oh my God. They were just like, well, we beat you in week 1, and that's something that I would have to live with. And good God, so the only other thing is, the Giants are staying on the West Coast. Well, technically, Arizona is 1 hour behind, but it's still good. I think it's still a smart plan. So then they'll head over to San Jose for the game too, as well. I did kind of want to talk before we get out of here and everything as well, because it's kind of late and everything, and I don't know why I want to watch the rest of this game.
Dude, it's good. Pickett just threw a strike.
I don't know. I guess I'm behind. I saw Watson.
Sack.
I saw Watson run a touchdown in, but the thing is,
Watson ran a touchdown in. Yeah.
The thing is, damn it, I lost my thought.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, sorry. Oh, no, the jersey aesthetics. So it looks like it's going to be the all whites with the Giants logo with the stripe under it, which I think is the sweetest logo that they have easily, and that is like one of the most beautiful jerseys.
Top 5 uniforms in the sport.
Easy. And the 94 throwbacks, which the Niners are going to wear. I think like we're literally going to be looking at probably the best jersey aesthetic. Although I got to say, I don't know, a lot of people aren't really liking the Browns jerseys. I think they're pretty sweet, these ones that they're wearing today as well too.
Yeah, and I think the Browns, that orange and that brown, I mean, understand for the Browns, I think it's one of the ugliest jersey combinations like ever. Like you get it off my TV. Like it says, "Oh, Denzel Ward is hurt."
Yeah, he is hurt. Yep,
that's brutal.
I was just watching
but it's one of the worst jersey aesthetics. I like their jerseys in this case, but I'm with you. I was talking about it earlier with Rob. To me, this is a top 5 uniform matchup in the league because the Niners 94 throwback is just one of the cleanest uniforms there is in the league. It's just such a nice uniform. And then the Giants, that all white with the Giants logo on the helmet. That's why don't they wear those uniforms as their permanent aways? Like I love that uniform as well. And so it's going to be cool to see that aesthetics, especially because one of these Thursday nights, we're going to have to see the stupid highlighter green from Seattle. And my eyes are going to want to burn off after watching that for 2 hours.
The reason the Giants don't go away from that old NY that they have on their headphones is because they're pandering to their boomer fan base. Like that is like what my father used to watch like back in the day. I'm like, dude,
I would wish the Niners would do that, right?
Anymore, huh?
Don't you wish the Niners would pander to their boomer fan base? Because the 94 throwbacks, red and white, why can't that be the permanent home and away?
Hold on. Not every fan of 94 is a boomer. What are we talking about?
Sorry, Jason.
YA is like, we're talking about like the 60s, man. Like we're talking about that's boomers. That's a boomer.
For me, 94 is the boomer.
That's crazy. All right. On that note, we're getting out of here, man. Hey, Vish, tell everybody where they can find your stuff and everything. And I watched your show today with Rob, man. It was so good, man.
I appreciate that. You can find me on Twitter and on YouTube at Vish Kumaran. Make sure you're liking and subscribing there. Make sure you're liking and subscribing here. Jason does great work. He's at Jason Aponte 2103. Make sure you're following. Make sure you're liking. Make sure you're subscribing. And I think we'll be back next week at this time while watching Monday Night Football. And it will be a little bit different because the Niners would have played on Thursday and the topics of the game would have probably marinated and gone through a full weekend spin. So it'll be interesting to see what the conversation turns into.
2 more games on Monday. This is madness. I don't understand you, NFL. If you're going to do it how you used to do back in the day, where it would be one West Coast game at night and one a little bit earlier. Like this idea that I have to watch on my iPad while I'm watching on the TV. This is insane, NFL. Like you're not drawing viewers to either game because you can't really watch them. But
yeah, right. And by the way, I liked the week 1 being the one time we got the double Monday night. That was always special for week 1 this year because Aaron Rodgers had to be solo on primetime. They did this bullshit. I hate it. Please go back to what it used to be. I hate these changes the NFL's keeps on making. I hate the 7 teams in the playoffs. I still want to go back to 6. I still want to go back to 16 games. I hate the odd number of games. I like teams going 500. Please stop changing.
Hey, and shout out to everybody in here again. Make sure you like and subscribe to both channels. Again, it's a combined week right now. Like it's a short week for all of us too. Tuesday and Wednesday, we got to get ready for a preview. Thursday, we got to do post game. Friday, we do like our reaction. The good news is, Vish, I get to do something like Sunday, go watch football with normal people, possibly in a bar, and not have to worry about, watching the 49er game. And that's something that I really enjoy. So that's one benefit to having Thursday Night Football.
I agree with you on that as well. I like watching 4 games during time period. 4 is the max I can do kind of at once while paying attention to what I want to pay attention to in those games. But Niners games, I watch start to finish, watch the commercials, watch everything. And so I lose sight of any game that's happening parallel with the Niners. And it's kind of annoying to go back because I'm personally interested. It's kind of annoying because I have to do it either really early in the morning or really late at night to go back and have to watch all of those games just to get an idea of what happened out of my personal interest. So it'll be nice to have a better idea of what happened on Sunday itself because I'm not fully focused and immersed in the Niners game.
And it just speaks to your work ethic. So you know that this young man is putting in a ton of work. So obviously you guys know where to find him and everything. But that'll do it for us, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. We had almost 200 people in here. But we'll see you guys next week. And as always, go Niners. Welcome, everybody. Let's go Niners. My name is Jason Aponte.